wish upon you peace. I wish upon you grace. I wish for less of what you want and more of what you need. I wish upon you an old life with a heart that stays young. But most of all, I wish upon you love. I wish upon you truth when all you feel is down. I hope you know that an open mind still knows when to shut things out. I wish upon you a brave heart that will always rise above. But most of all, I wish upon you love. And as the sun sets and the moon begins to rise, so even in the darkness you'll find the light. You'll find the light. You'll find the light. Yes, even in the darkness you'll find the light. I wish upon you an easy life. I wish upon you hard times. I hope you know that both joy and pain each need the moment to shine. I wish you ears that are quick to listen, that you're slow to use their tongue. But most of all, I wish upon you love. The sun sets and the moon begins to rise, so even in the darkness you'll find the light. You'll find the light. You'll find the You'll find the light. Yes, even in the darkness you'll find the light. Yes, even in the darkness you'll find the light.
That we know right now. So how about you?
I see God in symmetry. I see God in a make-believe. I see God in a make something beautiful before life ends. I see God in irony, the fragile heirlooms within children's dreams. I see God in us. You see God in ways I wish I could. You see God in ways I wish I could. Without instruction, without without container. Dualistic framework, you see the Holy Ghost in broad daylight. I see the reflection in your eyes. I see the reflection in your eyes. I see God in healing bones, the sanctuary of our homes. I see God in the wilderness, in our magnetism to recklessness. Black or white or vivid color, after a while it all runs together. Our stained glass means nothing without light. I see God in a damaged girl, but you see God in ways I wish I could. You see God in ways I wish I could. Without assurance, without insurance, you believe. Without condition, for the promise of heaven, you see the Holy Ghost in broad daylight. I see the reflection in your eyes. I see the reflection in your eyes.
Would you believe me now if I told you I got caught up in a wave, almost gave it away? Would you hear me out if I told you I was terrified for days, thought I was gonna break? Oh, I couldn't stop it, tried to slow it all down, crying in the bathroom, had to figure it out, with everyone around me saying, you must be so happy now. Oh, if you keep reaching out, then I'll keep coming back. And if you're gone for good, then I'm okay with that. If you leave the light on, then I'll leave the light on. Light on, light on, light. And I am finding out there's just no other way. And I'm still dancing at the end of the day. If you leave the light on, then I'll leave the light on. Light on, light on, light. And do you believe me now that I always had the best intentions, babe? Always wanted to stay. Can you feel me now that I'm vulnerable in oh so many ways? Oh, and I'll never change. Oh, I couldn't stop it, tried to figure it out, but everything kept moving and the noise got too loud, with everyone around me saying, you should be so happy now. Oh, if you keep reaching out, then I'll keep coming back. And if you're gone for good, then I'm okay with that.
I'm not gonna wait. We're just from the get-go. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's South Canada, right?
Yeah, South Canada.
I went to Winnipeg.
That's right. That's where I'm from.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I'm Canadian. I'm from Winnipeg.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
that's my hometown. Changes everything. Yeah, we can play some Weaker Thans tunes maybe.
Humility, bro.
One of the best bands.
Yeah.
Prop Gandhi, dude.
Yeah, Propaganda.
All right, good morning, everybody. It is so wonderful to see you here. There's just life in here, people running around, and so it feels really great. My name is Andrew Zhao. I'm one of the ministers here at Colonial Becoming Meeting House Church. And this morning, our theme is going to be humble towards one another. So, on top of welcoming folks here in the Great Hall, a little shout out to the folks watching at home. Hopefully you are snugly and warm and have like warm coffee or toast next to you. For everybody, we have a worship guide that will kind of walk through the morning. We do err on the side of more reflection and contemplation. There's some reflection questions on there. Quick little asterisk for the part that says breathe in, breathe out. Those questions are from last week, but don't worry, we were going to put the accurate questions on the board. That was my mistake, I'll own that. And then folks on YouTube, in the description, in the caption of the video, you can find a PDF version of the worship bulletin. Our verse for today, for be humble towards one another, comes from 1 Peter 5:5b. Are you done with this? Okay, she's coming down. And it goes, and all of you must clothe yourselves with humility in your dealings with one another, for God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Let me pray for us this morning. God, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for the opportunity to be together, just as people, be together as a community, be together as a faith community and a church, to be reflective, to have a moment to pause, to consider how you may be moving in our own lives, both individually and collectively. We pray for the opportunity to learn from another and to maybe open up our ears and hearts to just how you might be speaking to us. We're thankful always for this time. We thank you just for all the love you have for us. In your son's name we pray. Amen. I invite you guys to stand as you are able for our first song. Let's worship.
Where'd you get those fancy clothes? Where'd you get those goodness knows? Just show some civility and act nice and gentle to me. Don't need no luxury, long as you all understand it. I'm not difficult to please. Just act nice and gentle to me. I am the kind of guy who likes to take you as I found you. Throw away your false eyelashes and act nice and gentle to me. And understand, act nice. Ooh. Act nice and gentle to me. understand. You're gentle to me. Gonna hack nice and gentle to me.
Hi, good morning. Hi, so now we're going to transition into the dismissal for our kids programming, God's Garden. So if you are a kid, and some just walked in from the other service, you can come up and join us for our song. Got your bear. Ooh. Eliza, do you want to stand here? Yeah. I think we got everyone. Yeah. Yeah, whenever you're ready. Thank you, band. Woo. Okay, so kids, on the count of three, we have to yell goodbye, church. So 1, 2, 3. Goodbye, church. And then church really loudly. On the count of three, say have fun, kids. So 1, 2, 3. Have fun, kids. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ted Stark. I'm here representing the Finance Committee. I've been asked to give a little bit of a giving financial update so that you know where we're at in our financial year. And actually, we're doing quite well. So through the end of January, our giving budget is just a little bit over $1 million. So that makes the math pretty easy for me. And so far, we have received $986,000. So we're just a little less than 2% off of our budget, which is really pretty good. This becomes a slow time of year for us in the giving, so really appreciate everybody's consistency and generosity in keeping up with their giving through the winter. We really thank you. We're on track, and things are looking pretty good. And speaking of generosity, here's John Hobbs from the generosity team.
Thanks, Ted. So he gave the big part of the report. When he and Jason talked to us a couple weeks ago, what was striking was the number of different ways people are giving. So December is a big month. You may have heard that once or twice. And so during December, we received giving in a number of ways. I'm just sharing this because it's not limited. It doesn't have to be limited to December. So people gave with cash, and they gave with a check, usually when they're here on Sundays. And then you can, and some people gave via PushPay, which is the electronic deal where you can text to give. You send a text, you get a link, you go on. That could be Sunday morning, could be Thursday afternoon. It could be whenever you hear this on YouTube or watch this and you feel compelled. We had some people give with stock. So maybe their stock had done really well, and they just donated it directly to the church. They didn't have to, there was no cash flow issue. They just donate it and get a deduction for it. Some people gave through a required minimum distribution directly to the church. We had some people name the church in their estate documents, maybe to the foundation or to the church directly. So there are a lot of different ways. I think that was primarily it. But there's a lot of different ways to do this. And so if you have any questions on any of those options, feel free to talk to Ted or myself or the church office, and we can give you details. Thanks.
Good morning. Welcome again here today together as a community. We like to take some space to reflect, breathe in, breathe out is what we call this space. And it just gives us a little time to take a deep breath, acknowledge our presence here with each other, and get our minds turning a little bit. So today we're talking about being humble to one another, humility. And I was thinking about this word, and I think a lot of times we commonly define this as like almost a pat on the back, or space of like, I was humble because I didn't brag, right? And so I kind of want to push us against that a little bit today. This is a book, Brené Brown, if you've heard of her. She's an excellent human being who has studied like human connection and shame. And this is her new book called The Atlas of the Heart. And it has all different emotions and kind of breaking through like what those look like. And so she did write about humility. And her definition of humility is openness to learning combined with a balanced and accurate assessment of our contributions, including our strengths, imperfections, and opportunities for growth. To break that down a bit more, she says, I can sum up humility with one sentence that emerged from the research that informed Dare to Lead, which is another book. And that summary is, I'm here to get it right, not to be right. What humility isn't, downplaying yourself or your accomplishments, which according to researchers is modesty, not humility. It's also not low self-esteem or meekness or letting people walk all over you. The emotion of humility involves understanding our contributions in context, in relation to both the contributions of others and our own place in the universe. It's different from pride in that we feel pride. We focus entirely on the positive aspects of a specific accomplishment. The term intellectual humility refers to specifically a willingness to consider information that doesn't fit with our current thinking. A willingness to consider information that doesn't fit with our current thinking. People who demonstrate intellectual humility don't lack confidence or conviction. They may hold strong views, but they are also open to hearing other points of view. They are curious and willing to adjust their beliefs when faced with new or conflicting information. Humility allows us to admit when we are wrong. We realize that getting it right is more important than needing to prove that we are right. So as we have some space to reflect today, just a couple questions to get our minds turning. Can we throw those up there? What are some ways you think our society commonly views the word humility? What's your interaction with that? What do you think our society holds that with? And what or who in your life helps hold space for different perspectives? So take just a couple minutes to reflect on those. And let me know if you think of anything life-changing.
It's the longest night of the darkest year, the one you learn that life can go and disappear. And the holy light, you said God ain't here, 'cause how could he explain the kind of pain you feel? I just wanna hold you, I don't really know if I can fix this deal. Hate to see you hurting, know you're not a burden, I volunteer. Won't drown in the river, I'll swim out to you. I'll stand and deliver, I'll carry you through. If you lose all the meaning of life, love and truth, I'll stand and deliver, I'll show up for you. What comes to pass don't come to stay. We hate the ones we have, they are dead by day. As long as we are living the desert in our life, we'll hold on to each other in the darkness and the light. Won't drown in the river, I'll swim out to you. I'll stand and deliver, I'll carry you through. If you lose all the meaning of life, love and truth, I'll stand and deliver, I'll run out to you. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver. And even though you've been low, well, darling, you got someone to keep your head up high. Won't drown in the river, I'll swim out to you. I'll stand and deliver, I'll carry you through. If you lose all the meaning of life, love and truth, I'll stand and deliver, I'll show up for you. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver. I'll stand and deliver.
Some folks might already know this about me. I finished up seminary at Bethel about 10 years ago, and right towards the end of my time in seminary, I ran a kids program at a church plant in Frogtown, St. Paul, for like kindergartners through 8th grade. And something I was really fortunate to have is we just had a ton of adult volunteers. A lot of them were my friends. They're still my friends. And actually one of them, little sneak peek, she's going to be leading the worship band in a couple weeks, so a little teaser for you. And part of our objective, we just really wanted the students to experience a lot of meaningful things. So we would take them to the Children's Theater, the Children's Museum, Twins games. We tried to do all these lessons, obviously Bible lessons, but we did like spoken word and drum circles. And something we did to make accessibility easier is we would pick up and drop off the kids each week. just so that they had a ride. And I remember this really adorable brother-sister combo. The sister was really outgoing, really talkative, and her younger brother, Gilbert, was also very talkative, but kind of in a different way. Gilbert had limited speech, and so he would say a lot of the same phrases over and over again. And one of his favorite phrases was "look at me," except typically it was a lot higher pitched, it was a lot faster, and he would just repeat it over and over again. So it was more like, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." And he said it all the time. Like it'd be dinner time, and we'd have pizzas. He'd have a plate full of pepperoni pizza, and he'd look at all the adults, "Look at me, look at me." Like, "Awesome, Gilbert, like enjoy your pizza." Or if it was craft time, he'd grab markers and construction paper. "Look at me, look at me." "Awesome, Gilbert, what are you gonna draw?" If you just hadn't looked at him in a while, "Look at me, look at me." You see, Gilbert had this profound desire that he wanted to be seen. He didn't want to be overlooked. He didn't want to get lost in the crowd. And I bring Gilbert up this morning because we're talking about being humble towards one another. And I think in my past, I've heard people explain humility as the need to see and not be seen. So just the idea of like looking around, understanding other people more, not worrying so much about our own attention or being in the spotlight. Which I think there's a lot of validity there, right? There's definitely good takeaways when we think about wanting to see and not be seen. But my hope for us this morning is that we go even deeper. We take a broader look. I really liked what Leah said. Brene Brown saying, it's trying to get it right and not being right. And I think when you use that phrase, getting it right, there's a lot of room to interpret that on what it means for us as individuals. For me, the worry with going from focusing on seeing and not being seen is it kind of creates this dynamic of like, well, it's me versus you, or it's like it's me versus others. And really, I want us to think of it as like it's me and it's you within all of this. And I'll elaborate. I'll explain more as we go. But back to Gilbert. I remember on those nights when I would drop him and his sister off at his grandmother's home, he always had this moment of transformation. Well, this is the cutest interruption. "Hi, Sloan. Where's Mom? You want to be by me? You can be by me until you get tired of it." This is Sloan, everybody. When I would drop him off with his grandmother, and he would have this moment of transformation. Bless you. And, the moment grandmother gave him a hug, you would just see his body melt. And he transformed from this kid who just like desperately wanted to be seen. Thank you, honey. Who desperately wanted to be seen and just had to cry out, "Look at me," to this kid who just quieted his soul. Like this kid, this beloved grandchild who knew he was safe, who knew his grandma cared for him. It was like night and day. Again, I don't think being humble is as easy as saying, let's see and not be seen. Because I think people and situations and systems are more complicated than that. Right? For maybe folks like Gilbert who are constantly ignored or overlooked, what does humility mean for him? And is it the same as what humility means for me and for you and for us here? So before we really get into it in this verse from Peter, I always like to give context. So we're in 1 Peter 5, so let's get a little context for what Peter's been talking about up until now. So first, Peter might not have been the author. There's some debate around it, but that's not what we're really talking about today, but I might just say Peter. So Peter is writing this letter, and he's writing it to, like a lot of the letters, just to a lot of early Christian communities in all around Asia Minor. So these are Roman provinces. And he refers to the audience of this letter as exiles in dispersion, which basically means they're just strangers in a lot of different ways. They're literally strangers in a strange place. They're not from there. But then also in a spiritual sense. They're strangers in a spiritual sense as far as like they are trying to follow Jesus in the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire has some thoughts about that. So on top of figuring things out, they're facing hostility and oppression from said Roman Empire as well as society. Like they just don't belong. So I think what Peter's trying to do in this letter, he has two main motivations. One, just give them some like faith instructions since they're the early church and they're figuring it out. But then also to give them some encouragement, give them some hope during this time of suffering. So once we go into the first few chapters, Peter offers all sorts of advice. On the pragmatic side, he tells them, hey, maybe y'all should just try to do as much as you can to appease the Roman Empire. Like follow the rules, the ones that, don't totally, mess with your identity or sense of self. It might change public opinion of you. You don't want to give people more reasons to persecute you. So that's really practical. On the somewhat trailblazing side, Peter tells Christian husbands to honor their wives and show consideration to them, which in today's context is not that revolutionary. And actually, he says some other things that are kind of problematic, like he calls women the weaker sex. But in the context of the letter and the society they had at the time, that's not what people were saying, right? It was revolutionary at the time to encourage this equality and to see women as equals, as they should have. And then, in resonance to Jesus, Peter has this strong encouragement to them to basically treat your enemies well. We've heard this before, but he's really adamant about that. He's like, I know you guys are suffering, I know you guys are being persecuted, but don't be violent. Don't lash out. Part of this upside down kingdom of following Jesus means we're going to respond with compassion and care. That's what's different about us. So these are all advice that he gives kind of leading up to where we're going. It's basically a call to keep fighting the good fight. And so then that brings us to the verse that I read earlier today from chapter 5. Again, it's, and all of you must clothe yourselves with humility in your dealings with one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And I'll be honest, at first when I read that, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Read the room. These are people who are being marginalized, they're being persecuted. I don't think pride and selfishness is really what's bothering them or is their main problem. And then I put it in the context and I remembered Peter's actually talking to the leaders. He's talking to the elders in the community. And all of a sudden my mind was this chunk, it's basically commentary about servant leadership. He's telling the leaders, the elders, to lead your flock eagerly. Don't do it out of obligation. Don't do it for sordid gain. That's what the interpretation said. I had to look it up. Sordid gain basically means sketchy stuff. He tells them not to lord their power or experience over the flock. Be an example. And so right away I was like, all right. I mean, if this is about servant leadership, isn't this what we want from the leaders in our community, whether it's faith community, the government, at work, in our families? You want people who lead because they want to lead. They're passionate. They're not doing it out of obligation. We want leaders who walk the walk and don't just tell us what to do. We want leaders who aren't doing sketchy stuff. And then when Peter gets to this part about humility, I think it's really powerful because it's not him just saying, hey, humility is a good thing for leaders. I think he's saying it's particularly important here, right now, because of what your flock is going through. They're being persecuted, they're being oppressed, they're probably confused, and they're having all these issues, is this worth it? And they're suffering in every sense, culturally, physically, mentally, spiritually. So yes, humility is important, but now, especially now, don't you dare use your power to take advantage of these people. Don't you dare use your power to gain anything for yourself. Have their best interests in mind. Care for them. Humble yourselves. And for me, that just became way more powerful. And actually something I really appreciate about Peter too is the verse is actually, all of you humble yourselves, clothe yourself in humility. So he's also saying, hey, younger folks, also humble yourselves and respect your elders because they're also going through it. They're trying to lead during this time of persecution and a lot of hurt. So I found that really profound. Humility is really interesting in that it fundamentally requires another person. So we've been doing this one another series, And basically every topic, like, it's good to have other people, but it's not inherent, right? Like, love one another. That's good. You should also love yourself. You know, provoke one another, forgive one another, pray for one another. Awesome. You should forgive yourself when you mess up. You know, pray for your own needs. You should stir yourself up towards good deeds. You know, provoke yourself. Humility is the one you can't do that with. You can't think you're being humble or embodying humility, because as soon as you do that, you've got to start over. You've missed the point. Humility isn't just about sitting by yourself and reflecting. It's not self-serving. You know, it's not taking the time to figure out how we can think less of ourselves. It's literally thinking about ourselves less, which means we have to think about others more. So again, friends, for me, the balance isn't so much like me versus you or me versus others. It's about all of us within the culture, within society. You know, when I try to think about others more, I want to think about what they're going through. I want to think about their perspective, their identity. But then also, how do I relate to them in all this, right? Like, what kind of power do I have? What kind of power do I have in our relationships? What kind of power do I have that they don't have? And I'm going to just use this word power pretty loosely, but like the power I have in that I get to experience the world differently. Maybe because I'm a man. Maybe because of my job, my sexuality. Maybe because of my height. Maybe I experience the world differently and I have more power in that way. So humility is not just interesting, it's pretty complex, because depending on how I answer those questions, what kind of power I have, and subsequently what I do or don't do in response to those questions, has a big impact. One of my moments of deepest, greatest shame happened a few years back. I was working in Baltimore in the summertime, and I would always park my car in a garage and walk a few blocks to the medical center where I was working with some visiting doctors. And I would take this walk every day. It would be maybe a 5-10 minute walk, and I'd always encounter a ton of panhandlers, just a ton of folks asking for money. And, you know, for the most part, I'd, give a buck, maybe say I didn't have cash on me. And at some point in my summer, I made the either conscious or subconscious decision that it'd be a lot easier if I just ignored everyone who talked to me. You know, I could put my headphones on and just listen to music and just like look too busy to interact with anybody. I made that choice. I remember one day I parked in the garage, I walked down a couple flights of stairs, I popped out of the exit door, and there was a young woman there, I assumed was a panhandler, and I did my thing, I just kept walking. And right away she says, "Excuse me, sir." And I was already in the zone, so I was just like, all right, I'm doing my thing, listening to music, too busy to stop. And she says it a couple times louder, "Excuse me, sir, excuse me." And I'm committed, so I'm just walking, and eventually she sprints after me, grabs my arm so that I would stop walking, and she looks at me and she says, "Excuse me, sir, you dropped your ID badge." And she handed it to me. Just deep, deep shame. You see, for me, it's not as simple as saying, I could have done a better job of seeing her. Or it's not as simple as saying, I just needed to get over myself, over my perceived annoyance that people would actually ask me for spare change. There's so many more layers to it when I think about how I relate to this woman within all of this. Right? I had the power of my access and my resources and my opportunities. I had all these more than this woman. I had this job, but I had this job because my dad worked there. And when I think about this woman or any of the panhandlers, and I see her, I gotta see her more than just needing a couple bucks. I need to think of her identity, how she views herself, how society views her, what her experiences are like, her place in culture, in these systems. But most of all, I should have considered her humanity. Like if I would have started there, like bare minimum, if I just saw her humanity, walked down the stairs, busted out the exit doors, saw her, smiled, said, "How's it going?" Maybe for a moment, a brief moment, I can give up some of my power. My power to ignore her, my power to either consciously or subconsciously think I'm better than her. And yeah, I know I said like humility isn't so much about thinking less of yourself, but maybe some moments warrant that. So friends, this morning, I know we are not all elders in a persecuted community of early Christian believers across Asia Minor, but I think this lesson is important for all of us. As we consider how we can humble ourselves, especially towards one another, what kind of power do we have? What kind of power do we have, especially as we relate to one another? It could be relational power, maybe power given by social status or opportunity. It could be positional power. However you have the power, are we using it to take care of others? Are we using it to put others' interests before our own? Are there ways we can relinquish power or use our power for the betterment of others? And at bare minimum, have we humbled ourselves enough to see the humanity of others? Because I think at the end of the day, part of our shared humanity is that we're all going through it. It's like what Peter was saying, like, hey, the early church believers, they're being persecuted, but also the leaders, they're trying to lead during this time. This time when the band was singing that Stand and Deliver song, these lyrics caught my eye with this idea of part of shared humanity is that we're all going through it. It was, as long as we are living, the desert is our life, but we'll hold on to each other in the darkness and in the light. So friends, as we think about our stories and our journeys and our pains, we know that none of them are the same. And the causes for our stories aren't the same, right? Some of us have a lot of control over what happens. Some of us have no control. And for most of us, it's somewhere in between. We're just trying to deal with the hand that we've been dealt. So can we humble ourselves enough to see these stories and everything that contributes to the stories so that we can act accordingly, so we can get to a point where really no one needs to constantly yell out, "Please look at me." Let's pray. God, we just thank you for just the type of God you are, a God who just has love for all people, no matter what their stories are or who they are or what they look like or their life situation. This morning, I'm also thankful for opportunities. I'm thankful for opportunities for us to just show up differently. Opportunities for us to maybe change the trajectory we're on so that we can show up better for one another. I pray that we could follow the examples well of Jesus, who just saw people as they were in their situations and just always showed up with radical love. So God, I just pray for moments that we can have some clarity as we seek to be more humble with one another. And in your Son's name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Andrew. So I want us to take what we were talking about a little bit and kind of put it into practice, if you will. A curiosity to consider the confliction around us, consider different thinking maybe. After another week of marches, of protests in our city, of Amir Locke being killed, that's a space where I need to ask again, What is my power? What is my privilege? And again, it's not a right or wrong or us or them, but all of us in a space together. And I was brought back to this podcast, this conversation between Brene Brown and Austin Channing Brown, who wrote a book. She's wrote multiple books, but she wrote a book called "I'm Still Here: Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness." And this conversation it's really beautiful. It really pushed me to practice humility. And so I just want to share some of this conversation with you. It kind of starts and this conversation is like right after George Floyd was killed and the protests were happening. So Brene Brown starts with, everybody is exhausted. Everybody. It's funny, too, because I think a lot of white people are feeling a weariness that has been a part of the DNA of Black experience since the beginning of the time in this country. She says that's right, Brene. And that's not new. That's not new to me. Right. Our exhaustion isn't last week. Our exhaustion is since we were born. Our exhaustion is our parents' memories, our grandparents' memories. The exhaustion is long. It's long. Yeah, it's bone exhaustion. It's DNA exhaustion. You were born into history of weariness, oppression, weariness. Right. And it's real. For those of you who don't know, Austin has a book called "I'm Still Here: Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness." Now, the way I first described, I don't remember if we talked about this on your TV show, or if we talked about this in another time, but whenever I have a book that really changes me and really gives me a kick in the butt, I always say, that book has wings because it makes me so uncomfortable I want to throw it. I read things that I knew were true and gave me words for confusion about why. And in these moments, I don't understand why this is not the sermon every Sunday. I've lived it first, Brene. I've lived it first. Say more. So I feel like I've kind of lived dual lives in terms of my faith. My faith was born in a Black church, but growing up, I also attended, I was also surrounded by white evangelicalism. I attended a private Christian school from the time I was in preschool all the way through college. So I've been around whiteness a long time, and all kinds of different denominations. Let me tell you, Brene, I've seen them all. I've learned the hard way. I've learned the hard way that there is a deep difference between Jesus that Black folks worship and the Jesus that white Christians worship. Tell me the difference. The Jesus that Black folks worship doesn't ask questions like, but does the gospel really have anything to do with race and justice? Black Jesus stands for the oppressed, cares about those who are marginalized most, and not just cares, Brene, sits with, lives with, fights for, is angered by mistreatment, protests with. While white Jesus is primarily interested in self and money and capitalism and in self, and how much can I get? How much power can I hoard? It's all about self. It's all about preservation of self, of ego, mostly power. Mostly power, a deep desire to yield power over others. And right, that's interesting because I think of Jesus and I think of power too. But I think of power with and power from and power shared and power within. I don't think of power over. And so, sitting with that conversation again, it's not to say like, I need to walk away with like what's right and wrong, and it's holding a space for us to practice humility, for us to practice a space of something that's conflicting, something that we don't know how to quite sit with. a way of seeing others' humanity. And so kind of reflecting through all of this, here is a definition of a little bit of what humility, here's where I would kind of land on humility tied to my faith. Jesus has taught me that humility is recognizing our privilege and power so that we can hold space for others' grief, exhaustion, and oppression, which can propel justice and create change, all in the name of love. I want you to take time to reflect on everything we've just heard. What are like a couple things that you want to walk away with today of like, this is what humility means to me. This is a reworking of how I want to think about this in my life. And when we take that, we can also then reflect on how does that humility show up in our connections and in our communities with others.
I went down to erase my sins. I went down, heard the rushing waters. I turned around and ran away again. Ooh, 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 ooh. I woke up in between some cornfields with someone else's dollars to my name. I felt inches from the gallows and my hope was running shallow and my soul was tired from being afraid. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I was afraid. I was afraid. I ran away. I ran away. I went down to the river Jordan with my tail tucked between my legs. I stepped down in the rushing water and let the rivers wash my fears away. I stepped down in the river Jordan and let the rivers wash my fears away. Let the rivers wash my fears away.
Thanks, band. And we got Josh Cleveland singing, leading worship today. As always, we've got Al playing electric, Damon on bass, and then we've got Rick Dodora joining us on percussion today. So thanks, band. Announcements. Yeah, let's do it for it. Announcement time. Today, we have Sunday school at 10:50 for adult ed in this room. So if you're attending that, don't go too far. On Thursday, February 17th, to continue our Faith and Justice series, we have Ebony Adedayo speaking. The topic is Gospel According to a Black Woman. This will be online only, so you don't have to come into the building. It's from 6:30 to 8. You can either watch it on YouTube or join a Zoom meeting. And then maybe a couple times you've heard us say Colonial becoming Meeting House Church. We voted to change our church's name not too long ago. The date to circle on your calendars is April 24th, which is our annual meeting. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. It's not easy changing your name. You can't just white it out and write a new name. So there's a lot of things that's happening, but that is the target date on April 24th. To officially be Meeting House Church, formerly known as Colonial. And then this isn't on there, but I'll just throw out a little shout out for those following the adventures of Georgie and Friends, episode 3 of the Unnamed Kids Show. Debuted today, so check it out. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Be warm, and thanks for being here. Take care.